Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Ramani, and welcome back to the Glossary series, a sort of a handbook or an overview of terms that are often used when we talk about narcissism and narcissistic relationships. These are terms that often show up in videos, articles, blogs, and other content about narcissism and narcissistic relationships. Some may be terms you've heard and may not know what they mean, and some may be terms you actually never heard, and so it's my hope that it'll create even more clarity for you around narcissistic relationships and narcissism in general. Today, I'm going to talk about invalidation. Before I go there, please, if you would, hit that button that says subscribe. Would love to have you as part of this channel. And also, if you want that bell to get notifications every time we put out new content. So let's talk about invalidation. This particular video was born out of a few people who are watching this series who dropped comments and emails of people reaching out to have this particular term specifically taken on. It was an interesting request, and I thought about it a while when we got multiple requests, because I use the term all the time when I talk about narcissistic relationships, but I didn't even actually elevate it to the space of its being its own term per se. But the more I thought about it, I actually thought the commenters were spot on. They really were correct. This was its own term that really required some punching out to make sure it was clear to people who use it and hear it. Invalidation is what happens to a person who is in any kind of narcissistic relationship. And this can happen through many pathways of standard narcissistic patterns. The lack of empathy means that when you share a feeling, or honestly share anything, but a feeling is a great example, you are met with a blank stare. That's invalidating. The entitlement means that when you question that it is not, for example, the right thing to jump to the head of the line or expect special treatment, they tell you to keep your mouth shut or tell you that, God, you're so inefficient, no wonder you don't get anything done. That's invalidating. The grandiosity means that they yammer on and on about their next big thing or their next big plan or their next big business. And when you caution them or suggest that they step back for a minute before they do anything rash, they accuse you of not sharing in their dream, despite the fact that you had already made so many sacrifices. That is also invalidating. The arrogance means that when you provide some input or information on something that they are asking about, they call you a name, like they call you stupid or an idiot. That is invalidating. I hope that makes sense. Invalidation, in many ways, is a diminishment of your contribution, your experience, your knowledge, and frankly, you being a human being. Now, here is where invalidation gets confusing, because it has a lot of overlap with gaslighting. The way I view it is that all gaslighting is invalidating, but not all invalidation is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a denial of your reality. Now, I get it. Your reality is not that you are an idiot or that you're stupid. At least I hope that's not your reality. But that falls more under an insult. Gaslighting would be a case when they literally deny your experience, for example, a feeling or something like that. So an example of this would be, you share a feeling and say you feel hurt by something that happened between the two of you. Gaslighting would be for them to turn around to you and say, no, you don't. You don't feel hurt. You don't even have the right to feel hurt in this argument. Invalidation in this case would be, you feel hurt. Once again, you feel hurt when I talk about your mother. I don't know how to talk to you without you saying you are hurt. In the invalidation example, they are not doubting your feeling, but instead They are criticizing your feeling. Now, in some ways, what I'm trying to do in making this distinction is a bit like splitting hairs, because whether it's gaslighting or whether it's invalidation, both of them feel awful. Now, to me, one of the worst legacies of invalidation is that it can lead to self-censorship, which can then result in the loss of things like creativity, authenticity, and courage. If you grew up in a narcissistic family system, you know this well. You were often invalidated, and slowly, over time, you learned to not trust yourself. In fact, invalidation is a major contributor to the self-doubt and the second-guessing that characterize the fallout of narcissistic abuse. Invalidation can result in a lack of trust in your feelings, your words, your thoughts, and in some cases, ultimately, in yourself. In addition, invalidation can often foster conformity. It can sap individuality. And the more a person is invalidated, the less likely they will feel empowered to share the things about themselves that are unique. In my estimation, in this way, invalidation, there's so many ways it damages you, but to render you to not share those things that make you unique is one of the worst damages of what invalidation does to a person during childhood. It robs them of a voice for their individual gifts, and then through shame, it fosters a conformity with the party line, which just results in blind, numb, and inauthentic obedience. So in this manner, invalidation is an incredibly powerful and toxic way of shaping behavior of other people in a single direction, the way you would want it if you're the invalidator. Many of you may reflect on your own childhoods in which invalidation killed an interest in something that was not traditional or what your parents or family valued. That might be an interest in art or music, an interest in wanting to live in a different place or a different region as an adult, or pursuing a trade rather than a college path. In that way, to me, invalidation is a thief, and it is a weapon of the insecure. They use it to create conformity and allow them to not have to experience the threat of there being other ways for things to be. Because remember, for the narcissist, it has to be the way they think things should be done. A common invalidation pattern is when people are told, oh, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about anything. That's not gaslighting per se, because it's not a denial of reality. But what it does is that it invalidates the opportunity that somebody may have, or just the feeling that somebody might have to be concerned, and may leave someone feeling silenced, as though they cannot even share their anxieties about a situation because they keep hearing, don't worry, everything's going to be fine. And this is where invalidation can get really confusing, because saying, don't worry about it, it's going to be fine, doesn't seem like a mean thing to do or mean-spirited thing to do, but it can definitely curtail a person and leave them feeling as though they shouldn't keep talking about something because they're going to look overly neurotic or ridiculously anxious. There's also a carelessness that can accompany the don't worry as an ideology. You may want to ensure, for example, let's use a more extreme example. You want to ensure the safety of a child near a swimming pool. And you're a responsible parent, and that's your concern. And others around you might say, don't worry, go use the bathroom. There's a lot of us keeping an eye on him. But that blasé attitude may be concerning because they aren't worried. You may feel as though your very real fears are invalidated and the stakes are too high. You'll either pull your kid out of the pool or just not go to the bathroom. For this reason, the don't worry type of invalidation can be so exhausting. Many people will report that they do worry, and for good reason. And the invalidator's tendency to say, oh, come on, don't worry about it, it's nothing, means that you find yourself feeling responsible for having to worry for everyone and to ensure that adequate protections are in place because of the dismissive don't worryness of it all. As a result, you're the one who sets like 10 alarms in the morning to catch that early flight and set up the taxi and all of that. That whole Hakuna Matata, don't worry, be happy, no worries thing can get really tiresome really fast. It is a luxury for someone to tell you don't worry. And over time, you'll find that you have to be the one to carry all these burdens of worry. And then you may be painted as the victim or the worrywart, when in fact it's you that's making things okay. You're the reason that everyone made the early flight. And that feels invalidating because I can guarantee you in a narcissistic system, your contribution's definitely not going to be recognized. And you may not even care that it's recognized. But then you may even hit the wall of gaslighting when, because you're the one worrying, because no one else is actually paying attention, you're called out as a neurotic worrier. Another form that invalidation can take is through intellectualization. So for example, when you talk about feelings, that the narcissist may come in and talk about it back to you from a place of logic and rationalization. It actually feels pretty awful because feelings aren't always sensible, but they're real. And you might even be willing to acknowledge they're not sensible. If feelings were sensible, we wouldn't fall in love. We wouldn't go on flights of fancy. The good stuff happens in life when we feel. But when you encounter an unemotional, Mr. Spock surgical explanation for your feelings, doesn't feel good. You may be crying, and they may regard you contemptuously and say, okay, now let's be logical about this. Let's be logical. Sometimes logic doesn't matter. But to have someone apply principles like logic and rationality to your feelings can feel invalidating. And it is a very common narcissistic move because it allows them to stay in control of the situation. Another form of invalidation often comes in the form of cheer up. And this has been proliferating in the way of the think your way happy world that we live in. Just think happy. Be positive. Now, invalidation can happen when you share your feelings with someone. You might say, I am so sad. I can't take advantage of this opportunity. I really, really wanted to go on this trip. Or, God, I'm really struggling and I'm feeling really down since my breakup. Or you might say something like, it's really been taking me a while to feel better since I lost my job. I really trained for a long time for that job, so this is tough for me. I really liked that job. And then you say this to someone, the other person says, oh, come on now, cheer up, or get over it, or God, stop complaining. I'm kind of tired of hearing about this. This can really go darker when that other person, typically a narcissist, says, stop pitying yourself. Other people have it so much worse than you. These are all classical examples of invalidation. Your emotion is not heard or it's dismissed, and you are devalued as weak or ungrateful. This form of invalidation, the cheer up, get over it form of invalidation, pervades all kinds of unhealthy relationships, including toxic family systems, toxic friendships, and certainly unhealthy relationships. But what is interesting is that the world has kind of gotten on board with this. Just go take a look at your social media feed. Heaven knows If you make the mistake of sharing some kind of negative mood state or negative feeling on your feed or someone else's feed, at least one person will tell you, get over yourself, or don't you know there are so many people out there that have it so much worse than you? That is invalidation. When people share emotions, all they want at that moment is empathy. They want someone to hold space for them. And most people will, especially if they are fortified with that empathy. I guarantee you they will, in most cases, move forward. Not from a place of invalidated defeat, but from a sense of, now I know, I am going to be okay. From that sense of support and from strength. Now, unfortunately, let's face it, your narcissist is not going to take that stance of cheer up. They're going to do a bit more of the get over it or other people have it worse than you stance. However, are there cheer up narcissists out there? You better believe it. And those cheer up narcissists tend to be the ones who are what we call sort of those communal narcissists. They use their self-righteous stance of positivity or being a guru of positivity to shut you down by telling you that other people have it worse than you, and in essence, shaming you for having a mood state. And then, just for the fun of it, they may throw in some gaslighting and imply that if you were a stronger person, then maybe you wouldn't be down in the dumps. Look how strong they are, and they're always positive. These are the sort of new age guru narcissistic types who force you into happiness and invalidate your experience of negative emotion. Interestingly, invalidation can also take the form of someone always trying to solve your problem. And yes, I know this can even happen in healthy relationships. It's not always easy to just be with someone else's pain. Even a loving and well-intended parent who is very present will want to solve or fix a child's problem rather than sit with them and let them cry out. I'm a parent, I'm guilty of it, I've done it many times. Our discomfort with discomfort means that we often inadvertently invalidate the experience of a person who is just going through a tough time and they just want to share their feelings. Sometimes, with many issues in life, there just isn't a solution. Sometimes our hearts get broken. Sometimes we don't get the promotion. Sometimes we lose the game. And we just need space to cry it out and move on. We don't always need someone to fix it. And in the quest to fix it, we can invalidate a person's experience and just not let them. Just let them be sad or disappointed for a while. We may not allow that for them if we feel like we just need to fix it. So it's clear now that invalidation is actually a theme, even at times in healthy relationships. Every one of us is guilty of saying, cheer up, or everything's going to be okay, or don't worry about it. It was never our intention to invalidate at those times. We just thought and wanted to help someone. And unfortunately, I got to be honest with you, even for me, as a psychologist, my temptation still after all these years is to want to fix it. But we spend years of being trained to sit on our hands in a way and to learn to be in a room with a client's pain, to feel it with them and let them know that it is absolutely okay for them to share their sadness and their pain, that it won't break me. And as much as I want to tell them everything's going to be okay, I've got to bite my tongue and say, no, I don't. My job is to let a person have their pain and then slowly work on the hard work of figuring out ways of thinking about it, being with it, experiencing it, and finally, finding meaning in it without letting it break them. That's all the kind of nice part of invalidation, but invalidation in a narcissistic relationship is often not that well intended. The pain of other people is often experienced as a bit of an inconvenience by narcissists. They already are contemptuous of emotion and emotional expression, so they will often try to nip it in the bud through invalidation. And because the invalidation and gaslighting so often occur together, it gets to be an experience of being entirely negated when you're in a narcissistic relationship. Invalidation that can be quite uncomfortable can take the form of stonewalling, which was another video in this glossary series, or it can take the form of deflection. It is not uncommon that when you share something that has happened to you, so for example, perhaps you tell a narcissistic mother, "No, Mom, I feel hurt when you tell me that you think that I'm not smart enough to do this job." And she then turns around and says, "Oh yeah? Well, remember that time when you said that I wasn't smart? You say that to me all the time." Okay? So not only does it feel invalidating to not have your statement even acknowledged, the real invalidation occurs when the other person, and particularly narcissistic people do this, they just fire back at you with the assertion that you did that to them. So that's it. Like, I don't have to listen to this because you once did something like this to me. This happens all the time with narcissistic partners. As soon as you raise an issue that you feel that is important for you, the two of you to discuss, they will, and you start talking about the issue, then they will immediately, almost immediately push back and bring up an event from the past rather than discussing the issue at hand. And that, while it's deflection, can feel very invalidating. Invalidation in romantic or close relationships with narcissists is typical. It happens for a wide range of reasons, including the fact that they are not listening to you, don't really care what you are saying, or just can't be bothered. Over time, the invalidation is one of the primary contributors to the most challenging elements of narcissistic abuse, particularly the self-doubt and the confusion. So, the big question is, what can we do about this? A great place to start if you're dealing with invalidation, especially in a narcissistic relationship, find people who are validating. In fact, one of the main pillars of intervention and empowerment and treatment for someone who is healing from narcissistic abuse is something I term bearing witness. In essence, hearing about and validating their experience, and in so doing, providing empathy and accurate mirroring for their feelings. To allow a client to share his or her experience and to hear it and validate it and acknowledge it. But you know what? This doesn't only have to happen in therapy. It can happen in a trusted friendship in which someone feels heard by someone who is close to them. To feel validated just by being heard accurately and empathically. Invalidation is such a core dynamic in the narcissistic relationship, and I thank those eagle-eyed viewers out there who are subscribers of this YouTube channel, who actually watched and said, you know what, I think you got to get to this one, who highlighted this need for this episode. Thank you for that. Because while gaslighting is a big part of the invalidation experience, invalidation definitely takes in more territory, and it's even a pattern that we may commit in our own relationships without meaning to. So I hope that this particular video not only clarified the concept of invalidation, and especially how it occurs in narcissistic relationship, but also I hope it may have woken you and made you aware about how we may all inadvertently invalidate people with a very innocent sort of cheer up in our own lives. We know it when it happens to us, and a lot of us may not even realize, like, yeah, it doesn't feel good to be just told cheer up or get over it when we're going through a tough time. That we understand that that cheer up may be well intended, but that sometimes we just need a minute. To me, validation and empathy are such powerful tools. They're like putting water on a plant or a flower that is starting to go limp. When we give something alive, that validation, that sort of water for a plant, it's amazing to watch how most people will start standing up straight again and be okay. You don't need to fix people's problems. You don't need to solve people's problems. And just so you all know, not all of us need to be happy every minute of the day. You are entitled to your feelings, and that's one entitlement I can get down with. So I hope this has clarified this term invalidation, which is its own sort of freestanding dynamic in narcissistic relationships, and frankly can happen in all relationships. So thanks again for tuning in. As always, please hit that button, subscribe to this channel, hit that bell, get those notifications when we put up new videos, and thanks again for tuning in.